Welcome everyone. Today we have another new episode, and this episode is very very important because we will discuss on university, industry and government relationship. World Talent Economy Forum actually working on that particular area, how we can make a better ecosystem in between governments, university as well as industries. Already different politicians, different corporate person, different academic person from 100 different countries, they join in World Talent Economy Forum, and we're strongly working on this, and this is our 299 episode. Thank you all of our speakers and the organizations and the audience, those who support World Talent Economy Forum, because we are actually moving forwards. So tomorrow hopefully we will finish our 300 episodes, and every day we are actually sharing our content in between government, university as well as industry in Asia Pacific, because my our major target in Asia Pacific, but we work with around the world. So I want to start from Professor Edward. How do you want to analyze today's topic, especially university, industry and government relationship?
Okay, well, this is a very important topic indeed. And since I have to get off early, I'll just give you the good points and then just a few warnings. Uh, in the United States, and of course I can talk about other countries as well, universities at higher education organizations, businesses and industry and governments often work together in a way that it benefits everybody. Um, and the classic example, frankly, is documented in the book by Abramson called The Innovators. And I recommend that book to anybody who wants to get a good idea of an actual case, and that is to say, the emergence of the computer and information revolution that we're living in now. And what you see is the government tends to want certain things, the universities want certain things, and business want certain things. Let me tell you about, first of all, the advantages of each of these sectors. In universities, professors and researchers tend to have a lot of freedom and a lot of leeway. They can think broadly, they can experiment, they have a lot of freedom because of the way universities are set up, and this is a good thing. And therefore, they can come up with innovations or sometimes very theoretical ideas that lead to innovations. And again, if you take a look at the relationship between Stanford University and the various companies in Silicon Valley, this is a classic example. Businesses want to create market value. That's what they're in business for. And so to the extent that they're involved, they can partner with a university and professors at universities, then they're getting the value of the insights and the discoveries and the breakthroughs of those professors and those universities. That's good for them. Government, of course, tends to be much more bureaucratic. It's much more difficult for governments to do things internally. I'll say a word about that in just a moment. But the governments, number one, can get specific value. If, for example, they're looking for a certain kind of technology, well, why not just partner with a university and let them have the freedom to try to develop that sort of technology? That's going to be good for government as well. They get specific value, and they get it just by contracting out with professors or with a program at a university. And again, the classic example is the communications and information revolution, which a lot of that occurred in Silicon Valley, as well as other places. University of Philadelphia, and the first supercomputer or the first advanced computer during World War II or just after World War II is an example. And again, some of my colleagues here, I'm sure, have much more detailed knowledge about that. So these kinds of partnerships tend to be very good and very profitable indeed. Now, I'll give you two warnings because I try to look at both sides. Often you can get governments and universities and businesses in what you might call a bad relationship. Let me give you an example. NASA, National Aeronautics and Space Administration, one of the reasons the United States was able to go to the moon is NASA was a new agency. It was a new government agency. they partnered with a lot of researchers at universities. In some cases, they simply said, "Hey, how would you like to work for us for a while?" I worked when I was an intern at NASA. We had a lot of independent contractors, businesses who were working as well. So you had this complex, and it worked very well to get humans to the moon. On the other hand, it started to become very politicized because government was involved. I remember when I was doing some research not too many years ago, talking to a professor at a university saying, "Oh yeah, well if you tell the government that you can do the following in space, you can get a grant without any problem. That's what they're looking for. They're looking to shower money for some particular project, even though the guy thought it was frankly a worthless project." But that's what the politics was about. So I warned about that. At the end of the administration of President Eisenhower, he was American president in the 1950s. Remember, Eisenhower was the general who led the European campaign in World War II. Since we're just a few days away after the anniversary of the D-Day invasion, Eisenhower was the one who put that together, one of our greatest military and political leaders. And yet, his exit speech when he left the presidency was to warn about the military industrial complex. That is, that the military and businesses, and you could add in universities, kind of get together and create a little club that actually hampers innovation. So while I am very strongly in favor of relationships between universities and governments and businesses, but especially businesses and universities with government sort of maybe helping out a little bit, be a little bit careful about having a university government business complex that in fact harms innovation and so forth. So the good, I think, outweighs the bad, but be very careful about the damage that can be caused if the government gets too much politicizes the businesses and the universities.
Yes, but we are observing culture is changing even in developing nations. We
Mm-hmm.
are observing COVID-19 situation. Some government playing a very good roles. They are also
Yes,
supporting different startup innovation and research. But we want to influence more government how they can contribute for more people, more research, more university. That is our objective. That's why we
indeed.
bring this topic, and this is
And
really
by the
really.
way, and by the way, again, I think that it's better for governments to say, yes, why don't we just let the businesses do what the businesses do best? Let's let the universities do what the universities do best, and we're going to help
Exactly.
out around as well. That's the model that you want. So I'm completely in agreement with that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Jamsid. How do you want to analyze today's topic?
Well, first, I want to congratulate you on raising the topic. I think it's a critical topic because we're in a time of change where cooperation is more important than ever. And by cooperation, I don't mean between individuals alone, but also between countries and the people that you just pointed out, the people in government, the people in business, the people that are in all aspects of society. And I'll start with one of the warnings is that, the United States was formed with separation of powers. And we suffered from the myth of rugged individualism, where we can go it alone, where we could just, if we didn't like where we lived, we could pick up and move. And there was always a frontier to move to. And in those days, we thought that land gave us our individual sense of freedom. And now it's turned into intellectual property is giving us this sense. And so what we do is say that my intellectual property is mine and mine alone. And if you want it, you must pay for it. So this is part of the barriers that we face when we try to cooperate with one another. And the myth of rugged individualism is just a myth, because I don't cut my own hair back when I had hair. I don't fix the fillings in my own teeth. I never was alone, even though I thought I was. And all my accomplishments were my accomplishments. So this is nonsensical, delusional thinking. And I had to learn this over time. But we as a people of the planet Earth must learn this now. So we must cooperate as governments. We must cooperate as businesses. We must cooperate as universities. And there can't be the separation of powers. Governments do their thing, universities do their thing, and businesses do their thing. They must work together. And the boundaries in nature are mountain ranges and oceans and things of that nature. The artificial lines on maps and atlases are man-made, and they are not real. So we have to break down these boundaries between us. And we can't build walls to keep us apart. We must tear them down so that we can work together. These are the things that we must do now. And your topic is perfect for this, because we have to reimagine the old ways of doing things, because the pace of change is not just going faster, it's accelerating, and it's getting faster every day. So what I often say, for most of our existence, a grandfather's life was much like a grandchild's, and now the grandchild lives in a different world than the grandfather did. These paces of changes are not just staying constant, they're accelerating. So we must be adaptable, and we must be quick and nimble, and not rely on what worked in the past. We must imagine what works in the future, and then do what it takes to get to there, to be able to solve the problems that right now we can hardly imagine that we're going to be facing. Thank you again for this wonderful topic and wonderful show.
Thank you, thank you. I want to give chance the more like senior speakers today. Then I will give chance to the youth speakers, because there are two panel. One is experience like Professor Rob, Dr. Eriks, Mr. James, and we have our talent pool like Raikons, Amanda, Aarons, and Mr. Manuel. So, Professor Rob, how do you want to analyze today's topic, and how you want to give some example from US context, that how that university as well as industry work together, and how government actually play their role?
Well, typically what I see, at least in terms of university and industry collaboration, are development efforts that cut across areas of interest for the company that's funding them. So what they do is they collaborate with the different university labs and research organizations to work on projects like a better process technology, finer process technology for microprocessors. A lot of the work that's gone into using artificial intelligence in a variety of unusual areas, like using it to modulate lights on cars, so that you don't see snow or rain. That was done with the work, I think, with Carnegie Mellon and Intel in that particular case. But it comes with having first a dialogue with different companies to find out what areas they're looking to do research, and then matching what areas that you have competence in to the areas the companies are interested in, and see if they will co-fund the underlying effort. And it'll have a lot to do with the depth of your relationship, how advanced your research effort is, whether it's going to be the best, because it's time to market with companies, and how well you build and can maintain a relationship that leads to trust, because no company's going to want to put a bunch of money into something only to have that money wasted. And so there has to be kind of a history of execution here. Otherwise, schools like Carnegie Mellon or Stanford or whatever in the United States can capture that money. Another way in is through the corporate social responsibility programs for different companies. Those tend to have a more giving nature, that they're trying to help the world and trying to move into different geographies and understand the problems of those geographies and help out when they can. Those programs aren't quite as well funded as the programs that are tied to products, but they are available, and they are funded. And then, of course, finally, doing something like the CDA program out of Cisco, where they go in with a team of folks after a joint problem has been identified, and then whatever the institution is works with Cisco's team to solve whatever the problem was. The issues that I've been aware of in the past are creating collaboration areas in Italy and in Korea, and helping schools in I believe South America as well, to bring up technology to allow for remote learning. So all of that has to do with building relationships. And I think the first step is really to set up a priority list of where your competencies are, where you'd like to spend the effort to do the most good to your country and region, and then use that as a guideline to pick the companies that are most likely to want to help in the problems that you most need them. And so you have a higher chance that, one, you're going to be more interested in carrying this through, and two, you can provide a value proposition that the company will find attractive enough to fund and participate in.
Thank you. We have our another speakers who always give us good news from CEO of Good News TV, Mr. Paul, also join with us. Thank you for joining with us. I want to get some feedback on the topics today from you. Before that, I want to give chance Dr. Eric. How do you want to analyze to this topic?
Yeah, it's already been said by James and Edward and all of us. Innovation clusters, right? Innovation clusters are the, I guess, the description of what has been very successful in a number of places, not just, as Edward had mentioned, in Silicon Valley, but certainly Silicon Valley is one of the key areas where this has happened. And historically, if you go back, it always is something of that sort. But I would say that, maybe if you go back 300-400 years, then you would also include the church, the Roman Catholic Church as a key player as well. But in a way, they were really like the government, right? I mean, they were the government in that sense, because they had the unlimited money. They can fund a whole bunch of things, at least at the start, until you had wealthier individuals or wealthier families or groups who can then do the funding as well. So you always need those elements, right? The kindling, the things that you can start the fire with, those are the innovators, those are the entrepreneurs. The match lighting, right? The thing that the one that provides the energy at the get-go. Those are the funders, right? Those are the one that gets the funding. And then you also have the businesses and the industry, which is in a way the market. That's the thing that you put on top of the fire that you want to heat up so that you can create the food or whatever you want to use, that heat that you got. And those are the things you need. Those are the ingredients to make things happen. And certainly the education that others mentioned, the Stanfords and all that, that's the one that's figuring out, okay, it's, we have to burn wood, or we have to burn something, whether it's wood or coal or something like that, to figure out the way to make things work. So those are the things that you have to do. And it's a pretty, like, in my example with starting a fire, use that as an example, as a template, and then expand that. And what the only thing I need to really want to say about this is that all the different players that are involved in that ought to do it earnestly and fairly and morally correct, right? I mean, you don't try to game the system. It's always the case that when one or several of the parties try to game the system to kind of like get in there and not really have to do their part, that's when things falter and things break down. And you have to avoid that part.
Thank you. I want to give chance, Mr. Paul. What's the good news you want to share with us?
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I guess the thought that just came from two thoughts on what we're talking about here. The first thought, I guess, Dr. Eric just inspired my thinking about with kindling the fire. Reminds me of sort of like how we kind of evolved as a race, as species, in Aboriginal groups, and I guess it was Aboriginal groups that worked together to that was everything they had until they possibly went to a different location and they met there was another group, and so on and so forth. So just that kind of thinking is sort of how call it innovative groups are people taking care of their own evolved in from what my recollection and having the Museum of Natural History on the corner here on the Upper West Side. The other thought that came is more a governmental thought. and we've been involved with the Pacific Rim since you're in Malaysia, whatever. But I learned about something called Zaibatsu and Chaebol with Japan and Korea. So another approach to running things, management, is the government going into business with different corporations and I'll put it like this, dominating the running of the country in that scenario. And or I guess you could even say the mafia in America, having an organization that is organized to do things. Now, of course, the thought of peace, love, harmony, working together for the better good is the key here, always in life. Thank you.
Thank you. I think today you have your birthday, right?
Actually, yes, today's my birthday.
Yes, happy birthday, happy birthday. I think everybody should wish Mr. Paul, and this is his 21st birthday. He's very young, and always he loved to do a lot of work. So thank you for joining today. We have our speakers from Malaysia, and she is youth, she is talented. So now we will listen from the youth community. Uh, Amanda, how do you want to share your experience about university, industry, and government relationship, even if you share some views from Asia Pacific, even from Malaysia, with our speakers?
Sure. So basically for myself, I started my uni life in Singapore for like 5 years because I spent my bachelor and master degree there. Then afterwards, I actually worked in Sabah state government for like 2 years. And after I gaining the governmental level experience, and currently I'm working as a public policy researcher in a think tank in Malaysia. But beside I'm working as a public policy researcher, I also have regional engagement in ASEAN level. Because for myself, currently I am the founding chapter leader for the Young Seeker Malaysia chapter. Maybe all of you wonder like how come it's like when I have full-time job, I also like spend my time to participate the regional engagement, because I think that the regional engagement can help me to widen the exposure, and I also can talk with different stakeholders like government, private sector, and even university. Because sometimes when I see the government, university, and even the private sector, they work in silo, right? Actually, that one shouldn't be assist, but it's like we can be the changing force to let everyone work together. Because if we let everyone to work together, then there are some change can be happen, and also we can uh, like how to say, create betterment for our country and even for the region. Thank you.
Thank you. Hopefully, we can collaborate together and we can develop better policy for Asia Pacific. Even I think there are many experts from around the world. Definitely, they will support our initiative as well. Raikun, how do you want to analyze today's topic, university, industry, and government relationship? Unmute, please.
It goes without saying that everything is interconnected. Everything is like a cohesive superorganism. I think it was James said, they're not individual, completely separated entities. They have to cooperate with each other, but at the same time, they have to run their own processes internally. So it's kind of a yin-yang kind of a thing where you have to, it's very important that we recognize a certain degree of individualism, but balance that out with cooperation. Basically, people should be autonomous yet cooperative at the same time. We are like a massively growing superorganism called planet Earth, called the human race, but at the same time, we are also individuals doing our own parts, living our own individual lives, and we're trying to make this superorganism work to serve the individual people and their greater happiness.
Thank
And
you.
I think this is just showing itself in the interrelationship between businesses, government, and every other aspect of human society.
Mr. Manuel.
Sure. Thank you so much for the invitation. So yeah, as most of our guest speakers mentioned it's really important to have an interaction between universities, governments, and industries. And the point I would like to add is it's important to have a technology business incubation program that could be supported or sponsored by the government in the universities, and it can also be sponsored by the industries. So having a technology business incubation along with industry focused curriculum will help students at master level to get involved into uh, startups and maybe to get opportunities where they can get different investments. So it's really important to have those kind of programs, incubation programs. And also I would like to mention the importance of intellectual property, like some of the guest speakers mentioned it. uh, it's important to have intellectual properties, but that should not stop also us to collaborate with others, because it's like without intellectual property it's not sometimes it's not possible to get investments. You need to secure your idea, you need to secure your project, you need to get some patents or some copyrights on your work before you can get some investment. So that's also important, but that should not stop us to collaborate with others. So that's what I would like to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aaron. What you want to add for today's topic?
And it's incredible how many very enlightened viewpoints there are in this discussion group right now. Absolutely incredible. Everybody's done a fantastic job and hit the nail on the head so far with every point. I really like what Mr. Manuel was saying about, having a sort of a centralized think tank, online presence that everybody could access. I think is kind of that effect of what he was saying. This is something I said on your show a lot before, because this brings top-notch information to entrepreneurs and to investors. And having something like this that's funded by, universities, by government, and by these, different entrepreneurial firms, would be revolutionary. It would be absolutely life-changing. But to get down to the bones of it, researchers will develop a quantum leap idea, right? And it'll just sit on the shelves for decades. The reason why this happens is a lot of it's due to lack of funding. And a lot of it is simply due to, entrepreneurs not being aware that this technology exists yet, not having a lot of saturation in that market, in that sort of a unified economy. And the entrepreneur being adaptive in that moving forward is going to be a huge step forward in and of itself. Now, a government that serves its people, sorry, I'm at my warehouse, there's a little bit of noise, if you'll excuse that. A government that serves its people has a central role to funding research and aligning it with public needs. And we do see some efforts like that going on in the U.S., but frankly, it's not enough. And in the entire rest of the world, it can never be enough. It never will be enough. Investing in education, investing in industry, and investing in your own government, a government that serves the people, very specific wording. That's what's really going to bring all this together moving forward into the future, and create better lives for everybody. But I'll pass it along at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. There is some important aspect, because like even in the COVID-19 situation, government has to do a lot of support to the local business organization, local university. University has a lot of challenges, even in Asia Pacific. I think Amanda may agree with me, because now university also has a lot of challenges. Small medium enterprise has a lot of challenges. So how we can figure out the role of government, how government can be more effective, because government has good sovereign. At least in Asia Pacific, government has very strong sovereign. They can support economically more to the university as well as this corporation and small medium enterprise. So Mr. Rob, what is your analysis how government can play more?
Well, so so the first step is really to develop some type of an expert panel. You need people that understand the capabilities that you have available to you in country. You need somebody that understands how companies work around the world, and you need these people to provide you with guidance in terms of how to spend your resources and develop the industry you wish to develop. The issue often is with governments, they move first and think later. It probably would be a lot better to think first and then move. That way you can really understand, what it is you want to accomplish and what it is you can accomplish, and then you have people that are right there to help you develop a plan to accomplish it. It's where I don't think there's any shortage of wants. The issue often is developing a plan and then executing against that plan. And for that, you need people that understand how the government works and understand how the industry works that you want to connect with, and are in country so they understand intimately what's really needed. So you can develop a plan that can be executed. Short of that, though, that's really the nature of my advice is do develop a plan, have people that can help you develop a plan, and then make sure that plan can be executed, and then execute.
Mm-hmm. That means Dr. Eric.
Okay. I don't know what else I can say. Everyone else has pretty much explained it. I think your concern, and I think everyone's concern, is whether the players involved are doing their role in an appropriate way. And as I mentioned, this really can work if all the players are doing their role earnestly. If people are trying to just kind of game the system and kind of get in on the side and not really do all the things that they're supposed to do, then it will break down. Okay, very often there's a lot of talk, but no action. When things like that happen, the lack of action is the thing that kills the thing, that kills the innovation, and it breaks trust. It breaks trust among the different links of all the different people there. If one or two of the players choose not to really provide their part of the role, it breaks the trust, and then everyone else is going to say, "Well, I'm out of here. I don't want to belong with this because I don't want to be doing all the work, or I don't want to be left holding the bag." So it's important that everyone participate earnestly. There's another thing is that governments, in some cases, especially in the dire situations, the politicians, they want fast and immediate wins. They want wins again and again and again. And that's not going to happen. Okay. You have to look at this in the long term. You got to look at this in over 20, 40 years or something of that sort. Well longer than, the term that the politician would stay in, even if they were to win their re-elections term after term. It is something that they have to plant the seed if they don't have it already. They have to plant that seed and expect some future politician to, harvest that growth and make that happen. So they may not win it, but it'll be won by someone else. One of the great examples is Bill Clinton's efforts with, the Human Genome Project and things with the DNA, working with the DNA during the early 1990s. He pushed that forward because prior administrations were sort of very no about stem cells and all these other things, but Bill Clinton, pushed that forward, and a lot of the things that he created certain programs that I know here in San Francisco Bay Area is part of the biotech sector that we have in Mission Bay area of San Francisco. And those things came to fruition, basically these past years, 20 years after what happened with Bill Clinton, or more than 20 years, okay, when we have these mRNAs that were created to create vaccines for the coronavirus. That's 25 years of work and research. And Clinton has, he's long gone. He's 4 presidents ago, So you have to be able to plant the seed and let that thing grow over, many generations.
Thank you. Mr. Paul, you are part of media. So media has very good influence over government and corporations. And you are working very interesting projects like good news. You always good news, good messages, how we can develop peaceful community. What is your advice on that points because of making relationship in between corporations, universities, as well as this government?
Well, I'll tell you one thing I'm sort of wondering about. Actually, as the worldwide countries, what are they doing? And I sort of think that here in America, we are extraordinarily fortunate that the city, the state, the federal government, the philanthropists, the foundations, there is so much outreach to do good in America. I mean, it's for me, it's mind-boggling. People could spend a year trying to figure out which one should they go to try to get funded. It seems to me, there's hundreds of people giving money to causes, to nonprofit causes. I think it's a miracle, if you want the truth. And in fact, I question, I'll just say it because it seems to be another thing for some of the wealthiest who donate money. And now they're questioning whether that should donate money because they don't pay taxes as a result of giving lots of money to hospitals and things. And they're going to question whether to even do that. So will we still have a wing of a hospital named after, somebody? So I think do other countries do what we do? Our country seems like the opportunity of the opportunity of opportunity. So I don't know. I wonder about that.
Okay, Mr. Jamsit, what is your analysis on that point? Even when we discuss about media as well as this university, industry, and government relationship.
Well, I would like to start by saying, I was a director level in corporate America, director level manager. I've been on the boards of startups and established companies, for-profit and non-for-profit. And sometimes the not-for-profit are harder to work with because everybody's a volunteer and everybody has their own way of thinking that their way, because they're giving their time, energy, and money, you should do it their way. So it's very difficult, depending on the circumstances that you find yourself in, to get everybody pulling in their oars in the same direction. And that's what we really want to do. And what Rob was talking about planning, and in chess we have this saying, even a bad plan is better than no plan at all. So we want to plan. This is important, but depends on where you are. And so, and what environment you're in, what plan is the best. So you talk about appropriate technology, appropriate planning is also important too, because you want to inspire by leadership. Leadership is a fundamental quality. And sometimes we have bad leaders and man, that doesn't work so well. Sometimes we have good leaders and they get to be other people pulling their oars in the same direction and the boat moves. And it moves in the direction you want it to move in. So these are all different aspects of it. And Dr. Eric was talking about trust, man. Well, in the United States, trust is broken down. We've lost it. So how do we regain trust? That's an incredibly interesting topic to me. And the other thing, besides the inspiration from leaders, he was talking about what Bill Clinton was able to do. This is a necessary component. Good leadership, people that have that shared values. But also, we talk about right now our Congress is just smashing into each other and going nowhere. So there's just nothing being done, because if they say A, I'll say not A. And if you say B, I'll say not B. And so where's the trust? Where's the working relationship? Where's this, what we call bipartisanship? Where has it gone? And I wanted to talk a little bit about what Raikhan said, the yin and yang part of this, because it is start with yourself. It is balance. It is balance in all things: government, industry, and university, and individuals. Balance is important. You have to take care of your physical health. You have to train your mind to acquire the skill sets that we need. And you have to have some sort of spiritual coordinate part of the equation, because that's where you get your morals, your ethics, your values. That's when you know you're doing the right thing. It'll be intuitively obvious that you're doing the right thing if you have it all together in balance. And then you can start to affect others. And people in your immediate sphere of influence will start to affect others. And this will grow. So we have to balance the individual needs with the community's needs. And that can be at a very local level. The technology is appropriate at your level. And for example, you don't build a windmill where there's no wind. And you don't build solar panels where there's no sun. So you have to apply the appropriate technology to the location that you're in. Work on yourself first, your community second, and who knows where it will end. But this is what we must do. And if we're talking about, and we've been trained as a society to think about ourselves first and not about our communities. And we have to think differently in the future. We have to think about the communities, and I think of the community as the planet. I don't care what country you're in. I don't care what language you speak. We're in this together. And if we can train everyone to think like this, we're in this together, then I think we'll make a lot of progress. Thanks for you.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to add another question from audience for our youth analyst. Jason, how do we decide which education or which research is for social good? When should the government support it, and should whether the research has market value or not matter? Amanda. So yes, how do you want to analyze on that particular point?
Okay, so basically for this question, I think that it depends like what the country's strength are. If let's say the country their strength is in terms of how to say they have like big population, and then they also have the the land to like doing some agriculture work. So maybe like for instance because I'm from Malaysia, so for Malaysia there is land and then there is people. So maybe we can use these two factor to suggest the government that maybe we can have some more funding for the agricultural research, or maybe some more funding to build out the high skill job for Malaysia, because for Malaysia there is lack of high skill job, and also Malaysia also dependent on imported food. So if we can build out the research capacity for these two areas, then Malaysia able to be self-sustained even the pandemic exists.
Thank you. Raikun, what you want to add? Raikun, unmute please.
I don't really think I have much to add on that.
Okay. In that situation, Mr. Manuel, I think there is a very important questions like research for social good. How do we decide which education or which research is for social good? Amanda add like for education, we can do agricultural research and this kind of thing. So Manuel, what's your views on that particular point?
Okay, so I would say that like other guests mentioned it, it's important to have a long-term goal. If the universities, the governments, and the industries are going to collaborate together or to have a partnership together, it's like we need to have a roadmap. We need to know where we are heading to. It's really important. So I will give one example. Um, if we take Australia, the government and the industries and the best universities, they came together with a quantum research program where they bring the best researchers in the quantum field, and they have a center of excellence where they go together and they do some research together. So because of that, they are one of the best countries in quantum research. So we can say that for now, right now, someone in a developing country wouldn't see like the direct importance of a quantum research program, but definitely like in 5 years, in 10 years, we will see most of the applications coming from the quantum technologies. So it's like Australia is a developed country, so that's it. But as developing countries, we should also look into the kind of industries that are necessary for our countries. Like Miss Amanda mentioned it, if it's farming that's important, if it's agriculture, we should know about it, and we should also know what the other technologies could be used for, and what is the help that we can get from those different technologies. And it's important, the collaboration is important, not just between government, industry, and university, but between universities. Like universities also should come together, come up with their best researchers, industries, companies to also collaborate together, and they should also interact with the government. So it goes like in the multi way, I would say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aaron. Unmute, please. Yeah.
So education and research are neither good nor bad. Like technology is neither good nor bad. It's the implementation of it. So you want to look at the people who are implementing it and see what their projects are about. And that will tell you what the government should invest in. If the products that are working to develop the technology are for the betterment, in your opinion, then that's what you should push towards. I think that that should pretty well sum up the answer to that question. Again, it's not the research or anything like that. All research is beneficial to humanity in some way. It's the implementation, who is implementing it, and why they're implementing it that you need to judge when you're trying to judge what is a good technology or a bad technology. Nuclear fusion is neither good nor bad. But a hydrogen bomb is bad, and a fusion power plant would be really nice, especially right about now. So, you have to look at who's developing the project. And I think that's where it ties into, I guess something that's kind of been glanced over on this whole discussion is just how much military takes the precedence in these collaborative efforts. If there are these collaborative efforts on, it's in the military-industrial complex. Just like how most high schools, most of their funding goes straight to the American football team that they have, or to their sports department. They're not funding art. They're not funding STEM. They're funding what projects their power and their dominance into the market. And as long as we hold that way of thinking, I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of good technologies coming out. So keep your eyes peeled. Don't get too hopeful. And if you don't see a leader, be one. If you don't see initiatives to take these technologies and use them for good, try to start them. Even if you're just one person, put the idea out on Reddit or any open source forum and see where people run. Plant that seed that these other people have been discussing so broadly. Thank you. I think that sums up my thoughts on the question. I think we lost Sharif.
I think Sharif might be frozen. So Rob, I think you are up next.
Well, I guess in talking about the question of it's always nice to see technology work so well. talking about the question of what's good or bad. That's a judgment question, and that's why I suggested earlier that should involve the government should have a panel of experts that they can depend upon, because, as has been pointed out, technology isn't inherently good or bad. It's how it's used, and of course the big problem we have currently is technology generating an awful lot of waste. Technology can also solve those kinds of problems, but we need to think about collateral damage now, in terms of what it is we're developing and what we're introducing into the environment. And so it is that collateral damage that often defines whether something is good or bad, or whether it's used to harm or help others. Medical technology can be used to fight viruses. It can also be used to create them, as we may be discovering here shortly. So in the end, ethics, I guess, come to the core of any investment here, but ethics is fluid. And so the end result is the government or the entity needs to decide upfront what its ethical imperatives are, articulate them fully, and that fits into the framework for whatever investment or effort it's going to make. Without a plan or an idea, though, it becomes far more difficult to discern what's good or bad, and often the financial aspects of the effort will then govern. And often we discover, like we did with the petrochemical industry, that just because something is lucrative doesn't necessarily mean it's good. So really thinking through the long-term effects with the panel of qualified experts that can help you make these kinds of decisions will be core to choosing things that help your nation or eventually harm it.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Eric.
In regards to the question,
yes.
First of all, governments should not pick and choose, okay? Because if you do, even if you allow it, if you allow that, then players within the government are going to pick and choose things that are going to be helpful to him or herself, and that's ultimately not going to be a good thing. Okay, there will be a selfish reason for them to pick and choose a particular way, and that's definitely not what you want to do. All you need to do for the government is to look at what's being done and just see whether it's being done earnestly. Again, going back to this, are the group or the individuals who are doing something, are they doing this to really try to solve something, or are they just doing this so they can milk the system? Okay. Here in the San Francisco Bay Area, we have homeless problem. Okay, like any other major city, we have a homeless problem, and there are nonprofits that are earnestly trying to do things to solve the problem, and there are others who create a nonprofit so they can go knock on doors and get money to basically fund that organizer, that executive director's salary. You got to figure out what is what. Okay, you got to figure out whether it's honestly done or is they're just doing this to earn money. The latter type that I was describing, they want to keep homeless problem around, because if there's a homeless problem, then they're going to get money. If the homeless problem is solved, then they're gone. You don't want that kind of a thing. Okay, you don't want those type of things, because they're in it for the money and not for solving a problem. So the way that they need to do is basically, in a very detached way, analyze what the problem that they're trying to solve, and sort of maybe ask experts to see how they evaluate, to see whether their solution method is at least rational or at least valid in some sense. You don't have to expect them to succeed. In fact, 90% of all attempts at solving a problem will fail, and if it's not 90%, then there's not enough people trying to solve the problem. So solutions are not going to always come up, and the solutions that come up may also have unintended consequences as well. So don't worry about that part. Just make sure that they're honest. Here in America, we have, for solving things and doing innovative stuff, is the SBIR, for example, Small Business Innovative Research. If you're a small business, you seek out a problem that is listed in now it's a website. It used to be they sent out a folder of different problems that you can do. You go on a website and you look at the problems and you go, I think I can solve this. Then you write a proposal and you submit it, and disinterested people will read that. They're all bureaucrats. They'll read that and they check off whether they hit certain marks and all that. And then they hand it over to some experts. They'll take a look at whether yours is better or more viable. And then they'll fund you. And then they'll watch you go through the process of seeing if it works or not. That's basically what they do. And that's been a very, very successful program. And a lot of projects, a lot of innovation has come out of that, to answer some of the other part of the questions here, that nobody would have intended, okay? Most of the solutions that we've seen today, most of the actual implementation of things we see today were never the original intent of what other people, the originating people who created it, did. So let things fly and let other people play with it and see what happens.
Okay, Mr. Paul, we are discussing on that how education or research, like we can decide which education or research is good for social good, and what is the role of the government, how government should support, and how we get the values of this research. Mr. Paul.
Well, first, I'd like to say, I've been in a good news media seat for 23 years right now. So I tell most people I'm stressed out from so much good news, because it's abounding as far as I see the world, about how many people are doing good and with good intentions. And I believe that there's organizations that oversee that as well, that see whether this charities are good or whether research organizations are good. And for the government, they just have, it seems to me, so many programs, all the government levels, that people will share, and I take it. I believe that they do a good job. So I'm under the good premise that people are doing the best they can. Of course, there will be some people that might get paid off. I don't know what to say, and thank God there's other outlets that are less trusting than I, and they'll, in essence, some people say that's what news was supposed to do, was to find problems. I remember interviewing the head of the New York Daily Post, and he said, that's my job. This was a 50-year, my job is to find the not good, okay? I'm open for the good, and I trust that you're good, and you can share your good with me. If somebody doubts that good, let them do that story. That's a whole nother world. But the world is good, and I just think that the government does well. We're based on that kind of a government. I'm really a John Lennonist, so I believe that the whole degree of where we're at to begin with countries and states and cities, it's a lot of segregation, and so I look at it at a whole different level. I push this from the moon. This is the photo. There's no boundaries, no borders. I just think we actually could use a better, 2 billion people shouldn't live in poverty today and not get a glass of water. There's just some serious issues that aren't being addressed, I think, in a greater scope. We have a United Nations down the street here in New York, and they do good also, I think, in many respects. However, I think we need a better management, world management, and let Mother Teresa and Gandhi run it. Somebody, but we need some kind of a better worldwide solution, because we have all the technology. I agree. Lots of money goes into bang, bang, shoot 'em up guns and things and so on because of mistrust for others. And I just think we need some serious worldwide changes.
Thank you, Mr. Jamesid. Thank you, Professor Donald, for joining with us. Mr. Jamesid.
Hi, Donald. Good to see you again. have a couple of points to make, and I sometimes feel like Don Quixote tilting at windmills when but you can't give in to despair. When you're trying your best, that's all you can expect of yourself. Do the best you can. Now, whatever system we put in place, there will be people that will try to exploit it. I think that's a given. That's not looking at the world out of pessimism. It's just reality. There will be people that try to exploit it, to use it to their own advantage, and not for what we would all here agree are good purposes. But I strongly believe they're in the minority, and I think most people are trying to make things better. And the problem I have sometimes is when I feel like Don Quixote tilting at windmills, is that look, in the United States, we're based on one person, one vote. It used to be just white male landowners, but we've come a long way since those days. But now there's voter suppression movements all across the country, and why is that? We can have another show about that, but I think that one of the worst Supreme Court decisions since Dred Scott was Citizens United, because this military-industrial complex that Eisenhower warned us about, now what's running the government is not the people, but it's the corporations. So we have to be open-eyed about that as well. It's money that's talking. And does the money want what the people want? That's not always the case. And things like water is life. But, some of these corporations, they're built on scarcity, not abundance. They're not incented to make water available for all, but all need water. But they can't charge for something that's abundant. They can only charge for something that's scarce. So if we're based on scarcity so that we can charge more for it, we're not headed in the right direction. So these are the hard questions that we must ask ourselves. And if you state the problem correctly, it's half solved. But if you try to solve a problem that's not stated correctly, then you're never going to arrive at a solution. And the problem is, start with yourself. Fix yourself first. Make yourself healthy and wise, and tap into that spiritual side of you that tells you what is good and what is wrong, what is good for all, not just for yourself. So it's not self-interest that we want to preach and teach to our children. It is the self, including the world, the globe. Think of what's good for the planet, what's good for all. Doesn't matter what country you're from, doesn't matter what language you speak, we're all in this together. That's the one thing that I want this message to come across, because it's not every dog for himself. You need a pack, and that pack is humanity. Because if we continue to poison the planet will activate its autoimmune system, and it'll give us pandemics until we wise up. We kept dumping pollution into our rivers, thinking it was an abundant resource. And then when the rivers finally caught fire, we woke up. Well, what are we waiting for now? The oceans to catch fire? We've already got islands of plastic out there. When are we going to wake up and realize that we cannot continue to do what we've done? We must change. And it takes leadership, but it takes anybody doing whatever they're good at. Because any nonprofit, any for-profit company, they need a leader, they need an accountant, they need a legal staff, but you want to apply them appropriately. You don't want a mental health representing you in court, a mental health expert representing you in court, and you don't want a lawyer teaching you how to handle people with mental health issues. So you have to put the skill sets where they're needed, and the technology where it's needed. Don't build windmills where there's no wind. So you want to apply what's appropriate and get the appropriate skill set on the appropriate problem. And this is where I think government role can play, because not every university has the resources and expertise to solve this problem, but maybe they have that expertise and resources to solve that problem. Well, who's going to guide them? Who's going to fund them? So this is going to take a cooperation at all levels. And if we have one government doing this and another government doing that, then how is it going to work? You know, so we have to be one government, one globe, one planet. And I think that that will bring us all together. And if we're working alone, we'll only get so far. If we're working together, who knows how far we can go. Thanks again, Sharif, for a wonderful program.
Thank you. Thank you. Professor Donalds, we are discussing on university, industry, government, and especially we have a questions that how do we, from our audience, this question, how do we decide which education and which research is for the social good? When should the government support it? Should whether the research has market value or not matter? So this area we are discussing. What do you want to add?
Well, let me just say real quickly about how I think that these partnerships could work. It's very simple. I've worked with the Technology Transfer Office in several universities, trying to help build relationships with industry. And so here in the United States, there's this wonderful system. That's what they use at Stanford and other places, where the government funds research, because basic research is not necessarily something companies want to do. They want to do incremental research so that they can create new products. There used to be Bell Labs and Xerox PARC and things like that, but they're not around anymore. Xerox PARC is, but it's much smaller. And so the definition of technology is taking scientific advances and changing them into something we can use, or using that knowledge for something that we can use. You look it up. That's the definition. So that implies if you have basic research at the universities, you have the ability to take that basic research and turn it into something that people can use. And so that's what the Technology Transfer Department of a university does, is they evaluate research at the university, and they try and figure out which research could potentially turn into some sort of technology that could turn into a business. And then the Technology Transfer Office basically helps startups use this technology to be able to create companies. And an example of one company that was true with is Google. And so that creates this loop between government, industry, and education. Because of course the universities provide the education and the basic research, the government provides the funding for the education and the basic research, and then that is then taken out to startups who actually take that basic research and turn it into something of value. And the universities do well because they retain some ownership of that technology. The students do well, who are professors who actually created the technology, because they retain some sort of interest. And of course, the companies are by nature, if they're successful, doing well. And as I said, Google is an example of that. And Stanford University's endowment for a while, maybe it's gone back to this, passed that of Harvard. And the reason is because they had stock in Google, and that just totally, and then of course that allows an education for them to have endowed professors, and it allows them to give grants and scholarships to students. I mean, Stanford doesn't charge tuition for families that make under $125,000 a year, and they don't charge anything for, they give free room and board, books, everything to people who make under $60,000 a year. And they're able to do that because of the basically money that they made off of the companies that were spun off from Stanford. So that's the one thing I want to say. The thing about creating companies that are socially responsible, well, at the point that the Technology Transfer Office is distributing this intellectual property, well, that's a place where decisions can be made. And I know Stanford, is another example, is giving students grants, and it's only a portion of the school, but they hope to have everyone at some point to take a week off and go somewhere and help people. So they've helped build water systems in Africa. They've gone to help educational systems in South Chicago. They've gone all over the world. And they said after somebody does that, they're different people. And those are the kind of things that help build us as responsible human beings. There's an old saying, which is, it's hard to hate close up. Somebody was going on about some people of one religion or another the other day, and it just made me so irritated, because I say, these are people, they're different. I mean, everybody's got their own thing. It's not something that makes everybody the same. We're never going to be the same. So I think that kind of is my answer to the question for right now.
Thank you. Amanda, can you hear me, Amanda? Yes. So
Yes.
basically, we are discussing that how we can improve more on academy, industry, as well as government relationship. And definitely, we need knowledge-based community. We need a knowledge-based global community who actually help us to go this ecosystem more strong. So I have my another question from our audience, that do you think it's possible for there will be a crowdsource open source education system that is not affiliate with the current institutions of industry, government, universities, or what is your advice? So actually, I just want to add few points. World Talent Economy Forums, we also produce like online content for education, School of Talent Economy. It's 100% free for our youth community. Regularly, what we are discussing, we develop the same content like classroom content for students. We have Asia Research and Development Institute where we do research. We do have our Al Noor Academy where we're planning to develop this cutting edge technology based college. Especially we want to produce more startup and entrepreneur, those who can solve this kind of problem. So what is your advice for World Talent Economy Forum as well as for this global communities? Like, is it acceptable if we develop any open source education system?
Okay, sure. Thank you for the question, Shari. So I think that if we need to analyze out of the university, industry, and government framework, right? I think like the youth
Yes.
organization, they can organize a lot of online activities which is free for the youth. So the youth can actually learn from the data analysis, or even like how to say CV writing, and even cover letter writing.
Mhm. Thank you, Mr. Aaron. Can you unmute, please?
Yeah, there are already a lot of efforts being undertaken to create exactly what this person was asking about, such as yours in particular, Sharif. Is kind of, if I'm not mistaken, based on a model very similar to what he was describing. But the big word that I think we've danced around in this entire conversation is transparency. It's been mentioned, but I don't think the word has been directly stated, is just how important transparency is. And that's why initiatives like yours will take precedence over the others, because you do have these think tanks, these discussions, and all these things like this, it's substantial to the transparency of it. So, I think that's just kind of my take on it, is that there are already a lot of efforts out there right now. If I'm not mistaken, Sharif is actually, and his team are actually working on developing one right now. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Manuel. Manuel, can you hear me?
Sure. Thank you. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, sure. So the point I would like to add, I can give one example. If we take the satellite industry in developing countries, like there are some young researchers, there are university professors who are trying to explain to governments and industries how satellite-based telecommunication can be an option for the telecommunication uh, in the countries. But I would say that it takes more time for the government to adopt the new ideas than the time that it takes to actually realize them. So one way of doing that is to opt for open source platforms where the applications of those technologies can be discussed so that it can help the experts from the government, the expert from the university, the expert from the industries to know how they can implement those technologies in their industries. So it's also important. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. This is our actually 299 episodes. And this is the area actually we are working how we can develop a major relationship in between government, university, as well as this industry. So I'm sure that if we can improve that area, especially in developing nations, we can solve many problems together. So I directly want to go for the concluding remarks for today. I want to start from Professor Donalds, then Mr. Eric, then Mr. James, then Mr. Manuel, then Mr. Aaron, and finally Amanda. So, Professor Donald, what do you want to add as a concluding remarks for today? And I request everyone, you can join tomorrow. We have our 300 episode tomorrow, and I want to give special thanks to our speakers and our audience as well. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to
Yes.
conclude by talking about the question you just answered, or just asked and others answered, which is about open source. One of the main things that universities teach, or good Stanford or any university, is how to develop what I call a shit detector. And that's a little bit of a problem with open source. Is open source universities is somehow you have to develop a rigorous curriculum, so you know that the person has studied this and they've studied that and they've studied that, at least to the extent that they need to have undergraduate courses where they learn to detect logical fallacies, to interpret statistics even in a broad sense, to be able to understand what sources of information are probably accurate and what sources of information are probably inaccurate. We don't want a school where the curriculum comes from Fox News or something like that, but in open source, that's
I think we lost Alvin.
He was on a roll.
Yes. Professor Donald, can you hear me? Okay, then James Sid.
Okay. If Professor Donald can come back, I'll cede my time. But my concluding remark is the same as it usually is to start with yourself. You have to keep yourself fit, eat well, sleep well, and spiritually fit as well, so that you know right from wrong. So you know that what you're doing is good for yourself, good for the community, good for the planet, good for all of us. And if you're motivated and your intentions are pure, you won't go far wrong. You're not perfect. You will make mistakes, but you won't go far wrong. You won't put your foot in a pothole and break your ankle. You'll just stumble and pick yourself up and keep going. Persevere, because there will be obstacles. You will all face obstacles. But let's not build any more walls between us. Let's tear down the walls. And let's not give up and say these problems are too big. I'm just a little guy. I can't change anything, because then you're just another brick in the wall. And we got to tear them down. Doesn't matter what country you're from. It doesn't matter what language you speak. We're all in this together. So the idea that we want to stress here is cooperation. Transparency is definitely part of part of what we need to be, but we also need to have some sort of controls in place so that the people that try to exploit the systems that we build are allowed to, or are caught, or pay consequences for this. We haven't even touched upon that, but there will be people that try to exploit whatever system we build. That's just a fact of life. You know, we can't just pretend it doesn't exist. It will exist. Now, who's going to be the enforcer? You know, these are tough questions. And who's going to decide what's going to save the planet, what's going to make it worse? These are tough questions. Are they insolvable? No. Is it difficult? Yes. Shall we shy away from difficulty? Because the other word we've danced around is fear. So much of what we've been talking about has been fear-based. I build up my country against yours because I'm afraid of yours. I build fences around my house to keep my neighbors out, you know, because I'm afraid. And, you know, don't let fear hold you back, and don't give in to despair. You know, we have to think about what we can do, not what we can't do or not allowed to do, but it's a statue of liberty. It's not the statue of license. You don't have a license to take from others. And this whole open source issue, this is a big issue in the chess world. You know, we had a free internet chess server, the open source, and then people took it and adapted it and modified it, made it a little better, and then they charged money for it. And there was outrage. You know, let people do that. Let people take your ideas and make it better and charge for it. That's okay. But if you want to learn, teach yourself. Don't wait to be taught. There's so much information out there that you can find and use to train yourself. And not everybody has to be the same. You don't have to be an entrepreneur. You can be an accountant. You can be an administrative assistant. But hook up with the companies that are working in line with your values, if you can. And I know that opportunities and choices are not universally equal. I know that, but try. Do the best you can. Try and align with your values. If you're an investor, don't invest in fossil fuel companies. Invest in green technologies. You know, invest in companies that will help the planet and not harm it. You know, and there's a lot of things. You know, you can't be vegan. Okay, we'll just do the opposite of what the Catholics do and only eat meat on Fridays. You know, so there's lots of ways that you can change with yourself, and then maybe your community. And who knows if your community can change the next community? Where will it end? I don't know. Professor Donald, are you back with us?
Yes.
I will cede my time to you.
Yes.
Oh, wow,
Okay.
that's nice.
Professor Donald, yes.
Well, what I was just saying was that that we need to have kind of a combination of open source. I'm as I've said before, I think that sometimes patent law is a little too restrictive, and I think I'm agreeing with James here. But what the creation is of the universities is intellectual property. It's actually, and that's patentable. I mean, people can own that intellectual property. And so and governments have to enforce that. So, and not only do local governments, global governments have to enforce that. And people invest so much in making this stuff in the universities and the government that it's reasonable for them to have some way of getting a reward and getting it back. So I think that that's an interesting thing with open source, is that, two kind of issues is that it's difficult to basically be sure that the people that are learning the right things. And another, which is basically a university education, in my mind, the most important things that happen is you start being around people that are different than you, and you learn how to decide what information is probably correct and which information is probably incorrect. And I mean, if you have those two fundamentals, all the rest of it is basically job training. And so, but that's real knowledge. So I think that that's a challenge with open source, and I'm looking forward to being able to keep working with you so that we can make a super good university. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Eric. Dr. Eric.
Yeah. Well, I guess my concluding remarks is that governments should just be less frugal, less stingy about picking winners and losers. Uh, you don't know what's going to happen 10, 20, 50 years out there. Fund them. Inspire people to do it. That's the first thing, is that you got to inspire people, give people a goal, give people a direction of what they want to do, and then fund them. Okay. Yes, some of that money is going to go to people who are going to take it and do nothing with it and misspend the money and all that. That's going to happen. You just know that that's going to be some X% of it. And as I think James is the one that's saying, it's going to be a small number. Okay. As bad as some of the worst grifters and cheats that we have, that total amount is pennies compared to the benefit that you get from the rest who make things, right? I mean, like, if you look at the internet, right? The internet was created back in the 1960s just as a means of communication between different places. And now globally, it's a multi-gazillion-dollar industry, okay? I'm sure during that time between the 60s and now, there have been plenty of companies, plenty of businesses that went into that using the internet in not honest and not good ways, right? They were devious and they were doing it just for the money and all that. But that amount is minimal compared to the benefits that we've received, which is, for example, the ability for us to talk to each other in this platform. I mean, congratulations for your upcoming 300th. But these are the things that the benefit, that benefits everyone, not just the people who made things. In fact, the people who made it get very little monetary benefits, right? Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the World Wide Web, he's not sitting on several $billion in cash or anything like that. He never monetized any of that. I mean, he's well paid and all that, and he has a job. But he isn't. He's not Jeff Bezos, right? So it's the others who have used what they created that has made all these things. So that's the key thing. I think one of the examples that is the big controversy now is blockchain and bitcoins. Whether that is an honest thing or whether that's not. The government should just look at it dispassionately and say, show us what you got. What is this blockchain? Can it be used? How is it going to be used? Okay. The fact that people are just betting left and right on bitcoins and raising that money, that's going to come out in the wash sooner or later. It's going to be another tulip bulb. It's going to be another Web 1.0 where people were betting on startups and IPO of web-based companies, and huge amount of money is lost. But that's going to happen, and But if there is any valuable technology that can be extracted from blockchain, it'll come out in the wash, and it may not. Okay, there are other technologies that really haven't panned out to provide anything of value, and things like that do happen. It's not a loss in that sense. So go out there and make it happen. Okay, I gotta have to leave.
Thank you, Dr. Eric. Thank you, Dr. Eric. I request everyone to share your email address. We want to invite through your emails, and as well as those who attend in our summit last month, we want to provide you certificates and everything. We have our another conference this month, 28 June to 2 July, and it will be based on future of healthcare system. So as we get a lot of response from around the world, so we have to arrange it for 5 days. Last time we arranged it for 2 days. Mr. Manuel, what do you want to add as a concluding remarks?
Okay, sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, I would say that to conclude, I would say it's important to have long-term goals. I would like to mention it again, and to have a clear roadmap so that we know where we are and where we want to go. And one roadmap that could be adopted is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, because it implies using different technologies, but to achieve the sustainable goals. So we can also, it's important that if the government, the industries, and the universities are going to have a partnership and collaborate, they can also adopt that as a roadmap. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you. Please send me your email address to my Facebook or LinkedIn, because we heavily used this Facebook and LinkedIn for our collaborations and partnerships, and definitely your certificates and other things we will forward those who attend, especially the summit. We only distribute our certificate those who attend in the summit. Amanda, what do you want to add as a concluding remarks? And you are also working with a think tank, so World Talent Economy Forum open for any kind of global collaborations, as well as we are looking for more volunteers, those who can work with us, and our expert panelists. Definitely they also work as a board of advisor for us. So this is the way we are developing right now, and most important thing is that we want to focus on cutting edge technologies. So our academy more focus on like cutting edge technology related things, and by this way hopefully we can solve many problem. And 40% of the population live in Asia Pacific, so we have to solve many problems. So this is the way we are actually working. So Ms. Amanda, what's your concluding remarks for today?
Sure. Thank you, Sharif. So basically, as for myself, I'm active youth advocate, and also in I also like to do public policy research. So basically, as a youth, I will advise the government to be the backbone of this framework, which is university, industry, and government framework. Because if government can be the leader to lead the discussion or lead the implementation, then the youth voices will not be left out. The youth voices will be heard by the government, and in the end, some of the initiative or some of the issues can be solved.
Thank you.
Follow
Thank
this
you.
framework. Thank you.
Excellent. This is actually really great sessions for our audience. I request all of our audience share our content as much as possible. Subscribe our YouTube channel. We are also moving with our fundraising options, because we need to fund to work in our projects. We need all of your support. Your support actually really helpful for us. And we have our another very important sessions tomorrow, because we are actually doing our 300 episodes tomorrow. So all of your support actually very important for us, and I want to give thanks to our speakers, those who always support our World Talent Economy Forum, Professor Donalds, Mr. James Eid, even recently joined Manuel and Amanda. I want to give all of you special thanks, and your support also valuable for World Talent Economy Forum. And we have our 300 speakers from 100 different countries from around the world. We really love your contribution. Your contribution is valuable for our developing nations. Thank you, Mr. James Eid, Amanda, Manuels, Professor Donalds, for your valuable contribution. Please, our audience, share our content as much as possible, and we want to celebrate together our 300 episodes. Hopefully your positive support can give us more energy, more strength. Last 1 year, every day we are working on this World Talent Economy Forums, and we just ensure we want to develop it as a qualityful organizations, and we focus on qualityful people. So I want to give thanks to everyone, those who joined World Talent Economy Forum. Thank you everyone. Thank you our audience. Goodbye and take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Well done, Sharif.
Thank you. Bye.